Violate these regulations on a cruise ship, and you might find yourself confined to a secured area below deck with surveillance personnel monitoring your actions continuously. This isn't hyperbole. Detention facilities on cruise vessels are genuine, and travelers wind up there with surprising frequency. A single poor choice can transform your ideal getaway into a catastrophe. Are you prepared to prevent disaster? This video reveals the 11 most critical errors that can result in cruise ship detention or complete removal from the vessel. You'll discover how travelers face confinement simply for secretly using vaping devices, the reason disputing with staff members can forfeit your complete journey, and which typical remarks are handled with extreme seriousness on the water. These policies are authentic, and cruise companies seldom clarify them up front. Security personnel, however, have memorized every detail. For those wanting to travel more intelligently, maintain safety, and avoid spending any time confined behind a secure door, continue viewing. Error 1. Smoking in prohibited zones. The pattern is always identical. A traveler walks onto their private balcony after dark, ignites a tobacco product or electronic cigarette, and believes they're acting inconspicuously. What they fail to understand is that cruise vessels feature incredibly sophisticated smoke-sensing technology. A solitary inhalation in an inappropriate location can activate a silent notification straight to security personnel. Multiple travelers have faced detention following tobacco use in restricted zones, regardless of whether they noticed any prohibition signage. The severity stems from this reality. Cruise vessels are maritime communities driven by enormous engines, filled with combustible fuel, and encompassed by materials that catch fire easily. Maritime fires represent among the most hazardous crises any crew might encounter, with virtually no tolerance for mistakes. This explains why even igniting tobacco in improper places, such as your personal balcony, sleeping quarters, or corridors, can result in being reported, investigated, and monitored closely. Certain cruise companies ban repeat violators from smoking completely, while others may confine you to the onboard detention area while the captain determines the appropriate action. The solution is straightforward. Identify your vessel's approved smoking locations and remain within them without exception. Most cruise operators offer well-marked areas, typically near outdoor decks or social spaces, where tobacco use is permitted. Electronic cigarette users should follow identical protocols since most vessels don't distinguish between them. Avoid pushing limits, because once security notices you initially, they'll monitor you more carefully afterward. Error 2. Making threat-related jokes. It may appear humorous. You're at the security screening, placing your luggage on the conveyor system, and you nonchalantly remark something like, "No explosives here, I promise." However, on cruise vessels, that single statement can alter everything dramatically. Security personnel intervene immediately, you're separated from the line, your belongings are confiscated, and abruptly your harmless quip becomes an official security evaluation. Regardless of your amusement, crew members won't share it. Cruise security handles every verbal threat, including sarcastic ones, as genuine until verification proves otherwise. This encompasses remarks regarding weaponry, explosive devices, or even ambiguous violent suggestions. Because you're technically navigating international waters under maritime jurisdiction, no ambiguity exists. Numerous cruise operators maintain absolute intolerance policies, and inappropriate comments can lead to detention, interrogation, and removal at the following port without reimbursement. Why such seriousness? Cruise vessels represent ideal targets for international security incidents, and security must sustain control constantly. They cannot determine whether you're joking or dangerous, and by the time they ascertain the truth, it might be too late. Therefore, they handle everything as a genuine threat with actual repercussions. Your optimal approach: maintain lightness, demonstrate respect, and avoid drama throughout security inspections. Don't joke about weapons, avoid mentioning anything appearing threatening, and absolutely don't trivialize safety protocols. You're not merely being observed, you're being documented, and one careless remark could trouble you throughout the voyage. Error 3. Excessive alcohol consumption. It begins like standard vacation behavior. Several tropical cocktails poolside, perhaps shots with newfound cruise companions at the bar. Fast forward 2 hours and you're speaking incoherently, staggering down corridors, and disputing with crew about reaching your quarters. Abruptly, your relaxed day becomes a complete security situation, and you're being guided to a detention space, not a spa. Overconsumption of alcohol ranks among the primary methods travelers end up in cruise detention. Most operators have explicit alcohol guidelines permitting responsible drinking. However, the moment you transition into aggressive, noisy, or chaotic conduct, the security team is empowered to intervene. Should you become physical, initiate altercations, or generate disturbances, you're probably heading directly to detention, or possibly removed at the subsequent port without refund and no transportation arranged. This matters significantly because, unlike shore-based resorts, cruise vessels cannot simply contact law enforcement when situations deteriorate. The vessel's safety remains the crew's obligation, and they don't need intoxicated travelers becoming liabilities in ocean waters. Furthermore, your actions impact everyone aboard. One incident can interrupt performances, postpone port arrivals, or trigger security procedures. The answer is uncomplicated. Control your pace, recognize your threshold, consume water between drinks, and pause regularly. If feeling intoxicated, don't continue. Most critically, never dispute with personnel. They'll record everything, and one incident documentation can terminate your journey prematurely. Error 4. Smuggling alcohol aboard. It appears like a clever workaround. You viewed social media posts and online forums showing travelers concealing vodka in hair product containers or hiding alcohol inside oral rinse bottles. Some advance further by stitching containers into undergarments or hiding miniature bottles within footwear. However, if you attempt this method and face discovery, you're not simply forfeiting your beverages. You might encounter cruise detention, lifetime prohibition, or criminal accusations depending on your sailing jurisdiction. Cruise operators are remarkably rigid about outside alcohol, and considerably more so regarding any prohibited substances. This stems from operating under international maritime regulations, port regulations, and their corporate responsibility guidelines. The security examination process is thorough. Luggage undergoes scanning, liquids receive flagging, and suspicious items lead to being separated. Some operators even perform surprise cabin searches during voyages. Here's what most travelers don't comprehend. If discovered smuggling alcohol, the cruise operator reserves authority to seize it and document your passenger record. Repeat offenses might result in permanent sailing bans. However, if your concealed item is something prohibited, even minimal marijuana in locations where it's terrestrially legal, you could face turnover to port officials, monetary penalties, or arrest. Cruise vessels don't adhere to local state regulations. Different rules apply at sea. How to remain safe while enjoying yourself. Straightforward. Understand the cruise operator's alcohol guidelines. Many permit 1 or 2 wine or champagne bottles aboard during embarkation, and beverage packages can reduce costs if planning indulgence. Don't risk it. Consequences far exceed a sober day sailing. Error 5. Disorderly conduct. It commences with heated debate near the pool bar. A couple has obviously consumed excessively, and voices escalate. Travelers begin recording, then someone tosses a beverage. Just like that, what started as verbal disagreement transforms into a complete spectacle. Security arrives within moments. The couple faces separation and detention, then removal from the deck. Within hours, they've transitioned from passengers to disembarked individuals at the following port. Cruise vessels aren't places for losing composure. Actually, maritime rules often surpass shore-based resort strictness. This occurs because cruise operators function under maritime law and bear responsibility for maintaining peace within confined environments. Any conduct threatening peace, safety, or others' enjoyment can justify removal. This includes intoxication, shouting, violence, harassment, or creating public disturbances. Your perception of severity doesn't matter. If crew considers it disruptive, you face consequences. These can be severe: confinement to your quarters under vessel arrest. More serious situations result in early disembarkation at foreign ports to arrange your own return. If authorities become involved, situations can rapidly escalate to actual criminal accusations depending on jurisdiction. Your optimal protection: maintain composure, recognize your drinking limits, prevent confrontations even if provoked, and if tension develops, depart and notify crew. Cruise personnel receive training to defuse situations, but once you surpass certain boundaries, even they cannot shield you from consequences. Error 6. Leaving cabin doors open. It appears harmless. You leave your cabin entrance slightly ajar while awaiting a companion. Perhaps you even wedge it with a towel to avoid repeated unlocking. However, you might not recognize that this minor habit could create serious security hazards and potentially trigger security contact. Cruise vessels function under rigid fire safety and security standards. Leaving your entrance open, even briefly, can interfere with automatic fire containment mechanisms. Cabin entrances are designed to seal completely during smoke or fire events. If your entrance remains propped open and problems occur on your level, even minor situations, investigators might trace the security breach to your quarters. This alone can produce formal warnings or confinement if patterns emerge. The issues continue beyond this. Open entrances also create security vulnerabilities. Theft remains uncommon on cruise vessels but occurs. An unsealed cabin invites opportunists. If items disappear and you left the entrance unattended or unlocked, your travel coverage might not reimburse the loss. Additionally, if fellow passengers complain, for instance, if audio blares from your quarters with the entrance wide open, that creates another mark against you. The solution: basic. Keep your cabin entrance secured and locked except when actively entering or exiting. If awaiting someone, utilize the viewing aperture or remain inside with the entrance closed. Need to converse with neighbors? Meet them in corridors, not partially in your quarters. This maintains your safety and keeps you off security's attention. Error 7. Using false identification. It starts as a prank. A younger traveler wants to purchase beverages and presents counterfeit identification, assuming nobody will scrutinize carefully. Or perhaps someone documents forms using incorrect birth dates to circumvent excursion age restrictions. They don't realize that cruise operators differ from nightclubs or casual terrestrial events. Everything aboard cruise vessels undergoes logging, tracking, and connection to your official government-issued identification. Falsifying anything, even minor details, can produce serious repercussions. Here's the harsh reality. Utilizing counterfeit identification or providing false details on cruise vessels is considered fraudulent under maritime law. Whether you're attempting to obtain drinks secretly, avoid charges, or qualify for inappropriate activities doesn't matter. If discovered, and many are, you're now documented. Cruise security will mark your onboard profile, and depending on the violation, you may face removal at the subsequent port. Some travelers have received permanent sailing bans from cruise operators. That's just the beginning. If falsification involves safety-related matters, like medical conditions or emergency contacts, you could face liability if problems arise. Imagine someone requiring assistance mid-voyage only for crew to discover their provided details were incorrect or obsolete. Now the situation becomes not just hazardous, it becomes a legal catastrophe. The solution is evident. Always provide authentic information. If underage, don't attempt drinking. If you don't satisfy activity requirements, inquire whether alternative options exist. Cruise operators prefer assisting you in finding solutions rather than punishing you, but only if you follow regulations. Error 8. Bringing outside food to dining areas. You've just acquired pizza from the pool area or picked up a sandwich at the buffet. You're running behind schedule to the main dining room, so you transport it along, assuming nobody will object. However, the moment you enter through the entrances, you encounter stares from personnel, not the welcoming kind. A server approaches and courteously but firmly informs you outside food isn't permitted. You feel embarrassed, bewildered, and suddenly sense the regulations are considerably stricter than anticipated. They are. Cruise vessels treat the main dining room like upscale restaurants, not self-service areas. Every dish, every progression, and every serving undergoes tracking and preparation according to health regulations, allergen management, and presentation criteria. When you introduce outside food into that regulated environment, you're not simply violating etiquette, you're breaching health and safety guidelines. Kitchen personnel don't know your food's contents, how long it's been exposed, or whether it could trigger contamination concerns for other travelers. Additionally, cruise operators care deeply for another reason. Bringing food from other vessel areas communicates a message: I dislike your offerings. This disrupts service flow and complicates your waitstaff's duties. On certain cruises, travelers who repeatedly bring outside items to dining rooms are discreetly marked and addressed by management or, in extreme situations, restricted to buffet usage for remaining meals. The solution is straightforward. If you're not interested in the dining room menu, either eat beforehand or wait until afterward. You can always request alternatives from your server. They'd rather accommodate you than confront you. Beginning dinner with tension isn't the atmosphere you want. Error 9. Unauthorized recording. It begins with something minor. Perhaps you're filming your meal, documenting your journey, or capturing a humorous moment on deck. Suddenly, a crew member enters your frame and you continue recording. Then you notice a confrontation nearby. Maybe a passenger faces escort or security handles a dispute, and you zoom in thinking, this will create excellent content. Within moments, another staff member approaches and inquires about your actions. If you continue filming, situations escalate rapidly. What appeared like innocent footage can result in being separated, questioned, and even detained.
Why?
Because filming crew members, particularly security personnel, is among the fastest methods to receive attention from the vessel's legal and safety teams. Cruise operators treat privacy and internal security seriously, with valid justification. Vessels function under international maritime law, and filming staff without permission can lead to legal complications, crew discomfort, and privacy breaches. Frequently, security recordings from travelers have appeared online, creating backlash, legal action, or contractual violations. This explains why some cruise operators now have guidelines stating that recording crew or fellow passengers during altercations justifies removal or detention. You might be requested to erase footage, and refusal could mean your device faces temporary confiscation. Even casual recording during safety presentations, port processes, or customs examinations is prohibited. You're not merely documenting your journey, you're potentially capturing sensitive operations that cruise operators must keep confidential. So what's the answer? Keep your camera directed at yourself, your companions, and the scenery. If something serious occurs nearby, don't record it, report it. And if crew members request you stop filming, comply immediately. Because the next footage you share might not be a vacation recollection, it might be legal evidence. Error 10. Late-night disturbances and pranks. It appears harmless. You and your companions are wandering corridors after midnight, laughing, perhaps slightly intoxicated. One of you knocks on an arbitrary cabin entrance and flees. Another conceals behind a corner and shouts something ridiculous. You record it, share it to your social media, and continue. No damage done, correct? Incorrect. The following morning, security is examining recordings, and instead of amusement, you're facing a formal written warning or potentially temporary detention in cruise jail. Because on cruise vessels, harmless late-night entertainment is a serious conduct violation. Unlike hotels, cruise vessels aren't simply accommodation, they're self-sufficient floating communities with rigid behavioral standards. Late-night disruptions, particularly ones targeting arbitrary passengers or staff, fall under harassment. Even something as basic as knocking on multiple entrances or leaving prank messages can be interpreted as passenger intimidation. Once someone files a complaint, security doesn't treat it casually. Surveillance recordings, key card documentation, and witness accounts are utilized to identify and discipline offenders. If your prank involves touching someone's cabin entrance handle, using vessel phones for anonymous communications, or impersonating crew, it escalates quickly. Cruise security has complete authority to detain passengers for creating disturbances, particularly if it affects rest, safety, or overall passenger experience. Remember, if your prank is filmed and distributed online, that's digital proof with your identity and timestamp attached. The solution is basic. Treat every corridor like someone's residence. Maintain low noise levels, respect private areas, and reserve laughter for public decks, because one night of foolishness can lead to being marked as a security hazard and possibly removed at the subsequent port. Error 11. Entering restricted areas. It always commences identically. An inquisitive traveler wanders past an entrance marked only, notices nobody observing, and slips inside for a quick look. Perhaps they're seeking a shortcut or simply want to see what's behind the scenes. However, minutes later, they're being escorted by security, interrogated, and sometimes placed in confinement.
Why?
Because entering unauthorized zones isn't simply rule-breaking, it's violating international maritime safety regulations. Cruise vessels are like floating municipalities, and just as you wouldn't enter a hospital surgical area or a pilot's control room, entire zones aboard are restricted for legitimate reasons. These locations may contain sensitive equipment, emergency mechanisms, or be part of security functions. Unauthorized entry poses safety hazards, not only to yourself but to the complete vessel. Even worse, during heightened alert times, entering crew spaces can activate lockdowns or compel the vessel security team to report incidents to authorities at the following port. Claiming you were simply curious won't protect you. Some travelers have ended up detained or disembarked early simply for opening entrances they weren't authorized to access. Cruise operators don't tolerate boundary violations, and surveillance cameras continuously monitor. The solution is basic. If it states crew only, treat it like a restricted vault. Remain outside regardless of how enticing or vacant it appears. Want to observe behind-the-scenes operations? Reserve a vessel-sponsored behind-the-scenes excursion instead. They exist and they're guided safely. Curiosity might not harm the cat, but on cruise vessels, it could result in your removal. Thanks for staying with us through all these cruise errors that could result in genuine trouble, or worse, in cruise detention. Now you understand what to avoid, what not to express, and precisely how seriously the crew takes your safety. If you gained new knowledge today, leave a comment and write, "I cruise smart," so we know you're among the informed ones. We review every single one. Select right here for the following video. Until then, sail safely, follow regulations, and enjoy your vacation, not the interior of the vessel's detention facility.